What strategies would you use to optimize the performance of a Spring Boot application? So we can implement caching for frequently accessed data, optimize database queries to reduce the load on the database, use asynchronous methods for operations like sending emails, load balancer if traffic is high, optimize the time complexity of the code, and use Webflux to handle a large number of concurrent connections. Describe a scenario where a Spring Boot application needs to dynamically switch between multiple data sources at runtime based on the request context. Imagine Spring Boot application that serves users from different places like Europe or Asia. We switch between databases based on where the user is from. This means if someone from Europe visits the app, they get the data from the Europe database, making the content more relevant to them. We set this up by having a special part in the app that knows which database to use when it sees where the request is coming from. This way, users see the information and offers that make sense for their region. Discuss how would you add a GraphQL API to an existing Spring Boot RESTful services. First, I would add GraphQL Java and GraphQL Spring Boot starter dependencies to my pom.xml. Secondly, I would create a GraphQL schema file in the source main resources folder. Then I would data fetches implement them to retrieve data from the existing services or directly from the database, and moving ahead, I would configure a GraphQL service using the schema and data fetchers. Then I would expose the GraphQL endpoint and make sure it is correctly configured. Finally, I would test the GraphQL API using tools like GraphQL or Postman to make sure it's working as expected. Describe how would you secure sensitive data in a Spring Boot application that is accessed by multiple users with different roles. To keep sensitive information safe in a Spring Boot app used by many people with different roles, I would do a few things. First, I would make sure everyone who uses the app proves who they are through a login system. Then I would use a special settings to control what person can see or do in the app based on their role. Like someone can see more sensitive stuff while others can't. I would also scramble any secret information stored in the app or sent over the internet so that they can only right people can understand that. Plus, I would keep passwords and other secret keys out of the code and in a safe place, making them easy to change if needed. Lastly, I would keep track of who looks at or changes the sensitive information just to be extra safe. This way, only the right people can get to the sensitive data and it stays protected. In an IoT application scenario, explain how a Spring Boot backend could be designed to efficiently process and analyze real-time data streams through thousands of IoT devices. In an IoT setup, a Spring Boot backend can manage data from lots of devices using a Apache Kafka, a tool that helps collect all the data. It then processes the data in a real time, figuring out what's the important and what's not. After sorting the data, it stores it in a database designed for a quick access and analysis. This way, the system can handle tons of information coming in all at once, making sure everything runs smoothly and quickly. Discuss the specific security challenges associated with using WebSockets in a Spring Boot application. WebSockets in a Spring Boot application faces security issues because they keep a constant connection open between the user and the server, unlike regular web pages. This can lead to risks like attackers hijacking these connections to intercept or send fake messages. Also, without the usual security checks we have for web pages, it's trickier to stop unauthorized accesses. To keep things safe, it's important to make sure only the right people can connect and encrypt the data being sent back and forth. How would you implement efficient handling for large file uploads in a Spring Boot REST API, ensuring that the system remains responsive and scalable? To handle big file uploads in a Spring Boot REST API without slowing down the system, I would use a method that processes files in the background and streams them directly where they need to go, like a hard drive or the cloud. This way, the main part of the app stays fast and can handle more users or tasks at the same time. Also, by saving files outside the main server, like Amazon S3, it helps the app run smoothly even as it grows when lots of users are uploading files.